Marcus Chen wiped the grease from his hands with a dirty rag as he stepped back from the alien transport ship. The massive vessel hummed quietly in his repair bay, its crystalline engines now purring like a contented cat instead of making the horrible grinding sounds that had brought its Zelkari owner to his small workshop on Nexus Station. "Good work, human," said Vexstar, the six-armed Zelkari captain, as he examined the diagnostic readout on his wrist device. "Your repair methods are unusual, but effective." Marcus smiled and shrugged. "Sometimes you just need to hit things in the right spot with the right tool. Your people make everything too complicated." The alien's four eyes blinked in sequence, which Marcus had learned was the Zelkari equivalent of laughter. "Perhaps. What do I owe you for this repair?" "Standard rate is 800 galactic credits," Marcus said, consulting his battered tablet. "But, since you're a regular customer, let's call it 700. Vexstar's eyes stopped blinking, and his tentacle-like appendages stiffened. 700? Human, that is very expensive. Are you certain? Marcus frowned. He'd been running his repair shop on Nexus Station for 3 years now, and he thought he had a good handle on the local economy. 700 credits was his usual rate for engine work, and most customers paid without complaint. "Yeah, I'm sure. Is there a problem?" The Zelkari captain's skin color shifted from blue to a worried purple. "Human Marcus, I think there has been a misunderstanding. 700 credits is, how do you say, more than most beings see in a year." "What?" Marcus stared at his customer. "That's impossible. I charge humans the same rate, and they pay it just fine. Humans," Vexstar said slowly, "are the wealthiest species in known space." "Did you not know this?" Marcus felt like someone had just told him that gravity worked backwards. "That's crazy. We're new to galactic civilization. We've only been in space for 50 years? How can we be the wealthiest species?" Vexstar's skin shifted to a curious green. "This is most interesting. You truly do not know?" "Human, your species controls nearly 60% of all galactic trade. Your economic systems are studied in universities across the galaxy. Some economists believe humans will control the entire galactic economy within a century. That's..." Marcus sat down heavily on a nearby crate. "That doesn't make sense. We're just regular people. We work regular jobs, buy regular stuff. I'm a mechanic, for crying out loud. I fix things for a living." "Yes," Vexstar said, his tone growing excited. "And that is exactly the puzzle that has confounded economists for decades. Humans appear to be ordinary beings with ordinary occupations, yet somehow your species generates wealth at a rate that defies all known economic models." Marcus rubbed his temples. "Okay, back up. If humans are so wealthy, why don't I feel wealthy? I mean, I live in a small apartment, I eat basic food, I drive an old speeder. I'm not living like some kind of space millionaire." "Ah," Vexstar said, "but you are. Your small apartment would be considered a mansion by Crenari standards. Your basic food includes luxuries that most Thoraxians have never tasted. Your old speeder incorporates technology that smaller civilizations could not afford to research." "But, I'm just a mechanic," Marcus repeated weakly. "Indeed. And, your mechanical services cost more than most beings earn in a year, yet humans pay these prices without hesitation. This is the great mystery." Marcus stood up and paced around his workshop, trying to process what he was learning. His eyes fell on various pieces of equipment he'd accumulated over the years. His sonic wrench set had cost him 2,000 credits, but he'd bought it without thinking twice. His molecular scanner was worth 3,000. His workshop itself, which he rented, cost him 1,500 credits per month. "Oh God," he whispered. "I've been overcharging everyone." "No, human Marcus," Vexstar said gently. "You have been charging human prices to non-humans. This is problematic for many species. But why didn't anyone tell me?" "Pride," the Zelkari explained. "Many species are too proud to admit they cannot afford human prices. Others assume that human prices are somehow justified by superior quality, even when the service is identical to what their own people provide. And some. His skin shifted to an embarrassed yellow. Some hope that paying human prices will somehow grant them human-level prosperity. Marcus felt sick. How many people have how many customers have I bankrupted? I do not know. But I suspect more than you realize. The Cranari family who brought their cargo hauler here last month? They sold their home to pay your fee. The young Thraxian who needed her personal transport repaired? She took a loan that will take her 5 years to repay. This is horrible. Marcus sat down again, his head in his hands. I need to fix this somehow. Perhaps, Vexstar said thoughtfully, this could be an opportunity to understand the human economic puzzle. You are a human, living among non-humans, charging human prices. You are uniquely positioned to observe the phenomenon from both sides. Marcus looked up. What do you mean? The Galactic Economic Council has been studying human prosperity for 30 years. They have offered a reward of 1 million credits to anyone who can solve the puzzle of human wealth. Perhaps you could investigate from the inside. 1 million credits? Marcus's eyes widened. That's more than most beings will see in 10 lifetimes, Vexstar confirmed. But, to a human, it is perhaps comfortable? Marcus did some quick math. 1 million credits would let him live comfortably for maybe 10 years if he was careful. It wasn't life-changing money by human standards, but apparently it was a fortune to everyone else in the galaxy. Okay, he said slowly. Say I wanted to investigate this. Where would I start? Vexstar's skin brightened to an enthusiastic orange. Begin with observation. Study how humans behave economically compared to other species. Why do humans spend money differently? Why do they earn money differently? What makes human economic systems so effective? I can do that, Marcus said. But first, I need to make things right with my customers. Starting with you. What should I actually charge you for this repair? The Zelkari considered this. For my people, a fair price for this work would be perhaps 30 credits. Marcus winced. He'd been overcharging by more than 20 times. 30 credits it is. And I'll figure out how to make amends to my other customers too. You would reduce your prices so dramatically? I have to. I can't keep accidentally ruining people's lives. Marcus paused. But this gives me an idea. What if I could create a pricing system that works for everyone? Something that takes into account the different economic levels of different species? That would be revolutionary, Vexstar said. But how? I don't know yet. But I'm going to figure it out. And maybe, while I'm at it, I'll solve this whole human wealth mystery too. Over the next few days, Marcus threw himself into research. He reached out to economist friends on Earth, dug through galactic trade databases, and started paying attention to spending patterns among his various customers. What he discovered was both fascinating and troubling. Humans did indeed control a massive portion of galactic trade, but not in the way he'd expected. It wasn't that Earth had some incredible natural resources or advanced technology. Instead, humans had somehow become the middlemen for almost everything. If a Cranari wanted to buy Thraxian crystals, they didn't trade directly. They sold their goods to human traders, who then sold them to other human traders, who eventually sold them to Thraxians in exchange for crystals, which went through several more human middlemen before reaching the original Cranari buyer. Every step of this process involved humans taking a small profit, and somehow these small profits had added up to humans controlling most of galactic commerce. But that's insane, Marcus muttered to himself as he reviewed the trade data. Why doesn't everyone just trade directly with each other? The answer, he discovered, lay in human economic innovations that other species found difficult to replicate. Credit systems, insurance, standardized contracts, bulk purchasing agreements, futures markets, investment banking, corporate structures, franchise systems, and dozens of other financial tools that humans took for granted but that other species found bewilderingly complex. Most alien civilizations had simple, direct trade systems. You made something, you sold it, you bought what you needed. Humans had developed elaborate economic ecosystems where money itself could make money, where you could sell things you didn't own yet, where you could bet on the future price of goods, where you could own pieces of companies you'd never seen. It's not that we're smarter, Marcus realized. It's that we're more comfortable with abstraction. He tested this theory by visiting the Thraxian market district on Nexus Station. The Thraxians were excellent engineers and craftspeople, but their economic system was beautifully simple. Artisans made goods, displayed them in stalls, and sold them directly to customers for agreed-upon prices. No credit, no interest, no complex transactions. Marcus watched a young Thraxian artist trying to buy materials for her work. She needed rare pigments that cost more than she could afford, but she couldn't get a loan because Thraxians didn't really have banking systems. She couldn't pre-sell her artwork because Thraxians didn't have futures contracts. She couldn't find an investor because Thraxians didn't have investment systems. "Excuse me," Marcus said, approaching her stall. "I couldn't help but overhear. You need expensive materials but can't afford them?" The artist, whose name was Zira, confirmed this with a gesture that Marcus had learned meant frustrated agreement among her people. "What if I loaned you the money for materials, and you paid me back over time with a small interest charge?" Zira looked confused. "What is interest charge?" Marcus explained the concept of lending money with interest, and watched as understanding dawned in her large, dark eyes. This is brilliant," she said. "Why have my people never thought of this?" "I think," Marcus said carefully, "your people prefer simpler, more direct relationships." "There's nothing wrong with that. But it does limit your economic options." Over the following weeks, Marcus began to understand the scope of the problem. It wasn't that humans were exploiting other species. Most human traders were honest and provided real value. The problem was that humans had developed economic tools that other species either couldn't or wouldn't use, creating a massive structural advantage. Humans could pool resources through corporations. They could spread risk through insurance. They could leverage future earnings through credit. They could optimize complex supply chains. They could create abstract financial instruments that multiplied the value of basic resources. Other species, for various cultural, biological, or psychological reasons, found these concepts difficult to implement. The Zelkari were too individualistic for corporate structures. The Thraxians were too direct for complex financial instruments. The Krenari were too risk-averse for credit systems. "It's not about intelligence," Marcus explained to Vextar during the Zelkari's next visit. "It's about cultural compatibility with abstract economic systems. So humans dominate galactic trade because you are more willing to embrace complexity?" "Exactly. But here's the thing, it doesn't have to be this way. What if we could create economic tools that work with other species' cultural preferences instead of against them?" Marcus had been developing an idea, and he was excited to test it. "What if I created a repair pricing system that automatically adjusts based on the customer's economic reality? Not just their species, but their actual individual circumstances? How would such a system work?" Marcus pulled up a holographic display showing his preliminary design. It would assess multiple factors: the customer's species' average income, their individual financial situation, the economic impact of the repair on their life, and the actual cost of materials and labor. Then, it would calculate a fair price that doesn't bankrupt the customer but still allows me to make a reasonable living. This sounds complex. It is, but I can automate most of it. The customer would input some basic information about their finances and circumstances, and the system would generate a price that works for everyone. Vextar studied the display. "And you believe this approach could be applied more broadly?" "I think it has to be. The current system is fundamentally unfair. Humans have accidentally created an economic structure that benefits us massively while disadvantaging almost everyone else. We need to level the playing field." "But why would humans agree to such changes?" "You would be giving up significant economic advantages." Marcus had been thinking about this question for days. "Because it's the right thing to do. And because, in the long run, it might actually benefit humans too. Right now, we're getting wealthy by accident, but it's creating resentment and economic instability. If other species prosper, there's more wealth for everyone to share. You truly believe this? I have to. The alternative is humans accidentally becoming the economic overlords of the galaxy, and I don't think anyone wants that. Over the next month, Marcus refined his pricing system and began testing it with customers. The results were immediately obvious. Non-human customers were delighted to receive fair pricing, and word began to spread throughout Nexus Station's alien communities. But Marcus also started receiving visitors he hadn't expected, human economists and trade officials who had heard about his experimental pricing model. "Mr. Chen," said Dr. Sarah Williams, an economist from the Human Trade Council, "we need to talk about your recent activities." Marcus invited her into his office, a small space behind his workshop that he'd recently expanded to accommodate his research into galactic economics. "You've been asking questions about human economic dominance," Dr. Williams continued. "And you've implemented a pricing system that significantly reduces human economic advantages. Some people are concerned about the implications." Some people? Human traders who work in this sector. "If your model spreads, it could significantly impact human profitability in alien markets." Marcus had expected this conversation. "Dr. Williams, are you familiar with the Galactic Economic Council's research into human wealth concentration?" "Of course. It's been ongoing for decades. Are you aware that our economic dominance is creating instability? That some species are beginning to view humans as economic parasites?" Dr. Williams frowned. "That's a strong accusation. Is it wrong?" Marcus pulled up several news articles from alien networks. The Krenari Economic Assembly voted last month to impose tariffs on human goods. The Thoraxian Artisan Guild is organizing boycotts of human intermediaries. 3 separate species have filed complaints with the Galactic Trade Commission about human pricing practices. I wasn't aware the situation had become so serious. It has. And it's getting worse. We're creating enemies through our economic success, and most humans don't even realize it's happening. Marcus leaned forward. Dr. Williams, what if I told you I think I've figured out why humans are so wealthy, and that I might have a solution that benefits everyone? The economist's eyes sharpened with interest. "I'd say you have my complete attention." Marcus spent the next hour explaining his research and theories. He showed her the trade flow data, the cultural analysis, the economic tool comparison, and his preliminary solution framework. "This is remarkable work," Dr. Williams admitted. "Your analysis aligns with some of our internal research, but you've taken it much further. The cultural compatibility angle is particularly insightful." "So you agree there's a problem?" "I agree there's a situation that needs to be addressed. But, Marcus, you have to understand, human economic dominance isn't entirely accidental. Yes, our cultural compatibility with complex economic systems gives us advantages, but we've also worked hard to develop those systems. Many humans have invested their lives in building the trade networks and financial structures that create our prosperity. I'm not suggesting we destroy human economic achievement," Marcus said. "I'm suggesting we share our economic tools and create systems that work for everyone. Think about it, if other species become more prosperous, they become better customers for human goods and services. Everyone wins." Dr. Williams considered this. "You mentioned a solution framework. What exactly are you proposing?" Marcus activated another holographic display showing a complex economic model. "I call it the Adaptive Economic Integration System. It would create economic tools and pricing mechanisms that automatically adjust to work with different species' cultural and cognitive preferences, while still maintaining fair competition and innovation incentives." "Give me a concrete example." "Okay. Take the Thoraxians. They prefer direct, simple transactions, but they lack access to capital for larger projects. My system would create a simplified lending mechanism that feels like traditional Thoraxian bartering but actually provides the same economic benefits as human banking systems." Marcus manipulated the display to show another example. For the Zelkari, who are highly individualistic, it would create decentralized economic tools that let them maintain their independence while still benefiting from economies of scale. And the Krenari? Risk-averse species like the Crenari would get economic tools with built-in safety mechanisms and guaranteed outcomes, allowing them to participate in more complex economic activities without the uncertainty they find culturally uncomfortable. Dr. Williams studied the models carefully. This is incredibly sophisticated. Where did you learn to design economic systems like this? Marcus laughed. I didn't. I'm just a mechanic who stumbled onto this problem and started thinking about solutions. Most of this is probably completely wrong from a technical standpoint. Actually, Dr. Williams said slowly, it's remarkably sound. Some of these concepts are more advanced than current Galactic Economic Council proposals. Marcus, I think you might have actually solved the puzzle. What do you mean? The mystery of human economic dominance. It's exactly as you said. We're culturally compatible with economic abstraction in ways that other species aren't, and we've unconsciously created systems that amplify this advantage. But your solution framework could actually level the playing field while maintaining healthy competition. Marcus felt a surge of excitement. So you think this could work? I think it could revolutionize galactic economics. But, Marcus, implementing something like this would be enormously complex. You're talking about restructuring fundamental aspects of how galactic trade operates. I know. But, I think it's necessary. And, I think I know how to start. Marcus explained his plan to create a pilot program on Nexus Station, using his repair shop as a testing ground for the adaptive pricing system, then, gradually expanding to include other human businesses willing to participate. If we can prove the concept works on a small scale, he said, we can present it to the Galactic Economic Council as a model for broader implementation. Dr. Williams nodded slowly. You'd need significant support from the Human Trade Council. This kind of initiative would require coordination with dozens of agencies and organizations. Would you help me get that support? Marcus, if your system works the way you think it does, this could be the most important economic development in galactic history. Of course I'll help. As Dr. Williams prepared to leave, she turned back to Marcus. Just out of curiosity, what made you decide to tackle this problem? Most people would have just kept charging the higher prices. Marcus looked around his workshop, thinking of all the customers he'd unknowingly overcharged, all the economic hardship he'd accidentally caused. I became a mechanic because I like fixing things that are broken. I guess I just realized that the galactic economy is broken too, and maybe I could help fix it. Dr. Williams smiled. You know, Marcus, I think that attitude might be the most human thing of all. Other species might see a complex problem and accept it as unchangeable. Humans see a complex problem and immediately start thinking about how to fix it. Is that good or bad? In this case? I think it might save the galaxy from an economic crisis no one saw coming. After Dr. Williams left, Marcus sat alone in his workshop, surrounded by the tools and machines that had become his life. Tomorrow, he would begin implementing his adaptive pricing system with real customers. If it worked, it might be the beginning of a new era of galactic economic cooperation. If it failed, he'd probably just end up confusing a lot of aliens. But, as he looked at the equations and models covering his screens, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced since becoming an adult, the pure excitement of discovery, the feeling that he was on the verge of understanding something important about the universe. He was just a mechanic, but maybe sometimes that was exactly what the galaxy needed. The next morning, Marcus activated his new pricing system and waited for his first customer of the day. He didn't have to wait long. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus activated his adaptive pricing system, and the results were beyond anything he had imagined. His workshop, once a quiet corner of Nexus Station's industrial sector, had become the busiest repair facility on the station. The waiting area overflowed with customers from dozens of different species, all drawn by word-of-mouth reports of fair pricing and honest service. Marcus stood in his expanded office, reviewing the morning's financial reports with growing amazement. His total revenue had actually increased despite charging lower prices to most customers. The sheer volume of new business more than made up for the reduced profit margins. Marcus called Zira, the young Thoraxian artist he'd helped with alone weeks earlier. She bounded into his office with characteristic Thoraxian enthusiasm, her crystalline features sparkling with excitement. "You have to see what I've done." She activated a small holographic projector, filling the office with swirling patterns of light and color that seemed to dance through dimensions Marcus couldn't quite perceive. The artwork was breathtakingly beautiful, combining Thoraxian crystallography with techniques Marcus had never seen before. "This is incredible, Zira," he said, genuinely awed. "How did you create something like this?" "With the materials I could afford because of your loan system." She gestured enthusiastically. "But, Marcus, that's not why I'm here. I've been telling other artists about your economic ideas, and something wonderful has happened." Zira explained that Thoraxian artists had begun forming cooperative groups, pooling their resources to purchase expensive materials and equipment. They'd created simplified lending circles, where artists would contribute to a common fund and take turns accessing larger amounts of capital for major projects. "You've given us tools we never knew we needed," Zira said. "But we've adapted them to work with our culture. Instead of individual competition, we're using cooperative enhancement. Everyone benefits when the group succeeds." Marcus felt a surge of vindication. This was exactly what he'd hoped would happen, species adapting economic tools to work with their own cultural preferences rather than trying to copy human systems directly. "That's fantastic," he said. "But how is it working in practice?" "Better than we ever imagined. Our artistic output has tripled, our quality has improved dramatically, and every artist in the cooperative is earning more than they ever did working alone. We're calling it harmony economics, economic systems that enhance cultural strengths instead of replacing them." Before Marcus could respond, his office door chimed with another visitor. Vextar entered, his usually calm demeanor replaced by obvious excitement. His skin was cycling through colors so rapidly that Marcus could barely keep track. "Human Marcus," the Zelkari captain said breathlessly, "I bring news that will astound you. The Zelkari Trade Federation has voted to implement economic reforms based on your pricing system." Marcus's jaw dropped. "The entire federation?" "Indeed. But not as a direct copy. We have adapted your concepts to our individualistic culture. Instead of centralized adaptive pricing, we are creating personalized economic algorithms that each trader can customize for their own ethical and practical preferences." Vextar activated his own holographic display, showing a complex network of interconnected economic systems. Each Zelkari trader now has access to economic tools that match their personal philosophy while still providing the benefits of advanced economic cooperation. "We call it individualized abundance, prosperity through personalized economic systems." "This is incredible," Marcus said, studying the display. "How did you implement something so complex so quickly?" "We didn't," Vextar admitted. "We began with your simple adaptive pricing model for basic transactions, then let individual Zelkari modify and expand the system according to their needs. Within days, we had dozens of different variations, each optimized for different personality types and trading preferences." The Zelkari captain's skin settled into a confident blue. "Marcus, your insight about cultural compatibility has triggered an economic revolution among my people. For the first time in our history, we are achieving human-level economic efficiency while maintaining our cultural identity." Marcus felt overwhelmed by the rapid pace of change. What had started as a simple attempt to charge fair prices was evolving into something much larger. "Vextar, are other species developing their own adaptations?" "Oh yes. The Krenari have created what they call security-based economic systems with built-in guarantees and risk elimination. The Morphic Collective has developed fluid commerce that adapts to their shape-changing biology. Even the notoriously traditional Eldorians are experimenting with heritage economics that combines modern tools with ancient trading customs." Marcus sat down heavily in his chair. "This is happening much faster than I expected. I'm just one mechanic with a pricing algorithm. I didn't design a galactic economic revolution." "Perhaps," said Zira, "that is exactly why it is working. You approach the problem with a mechanic's mindset, identify what is broken, figure out how to fix it, then build tools that actually work. Economists have been studying this problem for decades without solving it because they were thinking like economists instead of thinking like problem solvers." Before Marcus could respond to this insight, his communication system activated with an urgent priority signal. The image of Dr. Sarah Williams appeared, but she looked harried and concerned. "Marcus, we have a situation developing. Can you join an emergency council meeting immediately?" "What kind of situation?" "Political. Economic. Potentially catastrophic. Some human economic interests are displeased with the rapid spread of your adaptive systems. They're pressuring the Human Trade Council to classify your work as economic sabotage." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Economic sabotage? I'm helping people afford repairs." "I know, and I support what you're doing. But, Marcus, you've inadvertently triggered the most rapid economic transformation in galactic history. Some very wealthy humans are seeing their profit margins evaporate as other species become economically independent. They want it stopped." Vextar's skin shifted to an angry red. "These humans would suppress economic justice to maintain their advantages?" "Not all humans," Dr. Williams said quickly. "But some very influential ones." "Marcus, the emergency council meeting is in 2 hours. Can you be there?" "Where is it?" "The Central Administrative Complex." "And, Marcus? Bring all your research data. You're going to need to defend every aspect of your system." After Dr. Williams disconnected, Marcus sat in stunned silence. Zira and Vextar exchanged worried glances. "Human Marcus," as Vextar said carefully, "will your own species truly try to stop economic progress that benefits the galaxy?" "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "I hope not. But I guess I'm about to find out." 2 hours later, Marcus found himself in the most intimidating room he'd ever entered. The emergency council chamber was a massive oval space with holographic displays covering the walls and ceiling, showing real-time economic data from across the galaxy. Around the central table sat representatives from the Human Trade Council, the Galactic Economic Commission, and several other organizations Marcus had never heard of. Dr. Williams had saved him a seat near the center of the table, but Marcus felt completely out of place among the formally dressed officials and economists. He was still wearing his mechanic's coveralls, and he'd hastily stuffed his research data into a battered portable drive that looked ancient compared to the sophisticated equipment everyone else was using. "Mr. Chen," said Chairman Rodriguez of the Human Trade Council, "thank you for joining us on short notice. We need to discuss the economic disruptions your pricing system has caused." "Disruptions?" Marcus asked. "I thought we were discussing improvements." A sharp-faced woman Marcus didn't recognize leaned forward. "Mr. Chen, I'm Director Patricia Stone from Consolidated Human Enterprises. In the 3 weeks since your system went active, our profits in the alien services sector have dropped by 47%. Our shareholders are demanding explanations." "Your profits dropped because you were overcharging customers," Marcus said bluntly. "My system just made it obvious." Director Stone's expression hardened. "Our pricing was based on standard human economic models. We provided fair value for our services according to established market principles. Your pricing was based on the economic reality of humans, not the customers you were actually serving," Marcus countered. "A fair price for a human isn't necessarily a fair price for a Krenari or a Thoraxian. Market economics don't recognize species-specific pricing," interjected another official Marcus didn't know. "Price is determined by supply, demand, and competition, not by the customer's cultural background." Marcus felt his temper rising. "And that's exactly the problem. Human economic models assume that all customers have human economic capabilities and cultural attitudes toward money. We've been accidentally discriminating against other species for decades, and now that I've pointed it out, you want to keep doing it because it's profitable?" Chairman Rodriguez raised a hand for calm. "Mr. Chen, no one is questioning your good intentions. But we need to consider the broader implications of what you're proposing. Human economic dominance provides significant benefits to our species. Are you suggesting we voluntarily give up those advantages?" "I'm suggesting we share our economic tools instead of using them to maintain artificial advantages," Marcus said. "Chairman, do you realize that several alien governments are considering trade restrictions against humans because of our pricing practices?" We're creating political problems through our economic success. Dr. Williams activated a holographic display showing recent political developments. Marcus is correct. The Crenari Economic Assembly has voted to impose tariffs on human services. The Thraxian Council is considering restrictions on human trade access. Even our traditional allies are expressing concerns about human economic dominance. These are temporary political reactions, Director Stone said dismissively. Alien governments have complained about human success before. They'll adapt. Or they'll unite against us, Marcus said. Director Stone, what happens when 3/4 of the galaxy decides that humans are economic parasites and cuts us out of galactic trade entirely? How profitable will your company be then? The room fell silent as the officials considered this possibility. Chairman Rodriguez cleared his throat. Mr. Chen, let's assume for a moment that your concerns about political backlash are valid. What exactly are you proposing as an alternative? Marcus activated his portable drive, hoping his battered equipment would interface properly with the Council's advanced systems. To his relief, his research data appeared clearly on the room's displays. I'm proposing that we help other species develop economic tools that work with their cultures instead of against them, he said. Not by giving away human advantages, but by creating new systems that benefit everyone. He walked through his adaptive economic integration framework, explaining how different species were already successfully implementing culturally compatible versions of advanced economic tools. The Thraxians have increased their economic output by 300% using cooperative variations of human economic systems, he explained. The Zelkari have achieved similar improvements with individualized approaches. The Crenari are experimenting with risk-free versions of human investment systems. And how does this benefit humans? Asked Director Stone. Because prosperous trading partners are better customers, Marcus said. Right now, most alien species can barely afford human goods and services. But if they become more prosperous using adapted economic tools, they'll have more money to spend on human products. Dr. Williams added supporting data. Marcus's pilot program has actually increased human business revenue in the Nexus station sector, despite lower per-transaction prices. Increased volume more than compensated for reduced margins. That's one small station, scoffed another official. You can't extrapolate those results to the entire galaxy. Actually, we can, said a new voice from the chamber entrance. Everyone turned to see an elderly woman in the distinctive robes of a Galactic Economic Commission senior economist. Dr. Elena Vasquez, chief economic analyst for the commission, she introduced herself as she took a seat at the table. Dr. Vasquez, said Chairman Rodriguez with obvious respect, we weren't expecting commission involvement in this matter. This matter has become commission business, Dr. Vasquez said calmly. Mr. Chen's work represents the first practical solution to the galactic economic imbalance problem that we've seen in 30 years of research. The Commission has been monitoring the results of his pilot program with great interest. She activated her own holographic display, showing economic data from across the galaxy. In the 3 weeks since adaptive pricing systems began spreading, we've seen the most positive economic developments in decades. Interspecies trade is increasing, economic tensions are decreasing, and overall galactic prosperity is rising. But human profits are declining, Director Stone protested. Human per-transaction profits are declining, Dr. Vasquez corrected. But total human economic activity is increasing. Mr. Chen's approach is creating new markets and new opportunities that more than compensate for reduced margins in existing markets. Marcus felt a surge of relief. Finally, someone with real authority was supporting his work. Dr. Vasquez continued. Furthermore, the Commission has concluded that the previous economic model was unsustainable. Human economic dominance was creating dangerous instabilities that threatened the entire galactic economy. Mr. Chen's solutions are not just morally preferable, they're economically necessary. Chairman Rodriguez leaned back in his chair, clearly processing this information. Dr. Vasquez, what is the Commission's official position on Mr. Chen's work? The Commission recommends immediate implementation of adaptive economic systems throughout human-controlled trade networks. We believe this approach will prevent a potential economic crisis while maintaining human prosperity through expanded markets and improved interspecies relations. Director Stone looked apoplectic. You're asking us to restructure our entire business model based on the theories of a mechanic. I'm asking you to restructure your business model based on 30 years of economic research, validated by practical testing, and supported by the most comprehensive economic analysis in galactic history, Dr. Vasquez said firmly. The fact that the breakthrough came from a mechanic rather than a professional economist is irrelevant to its validity. Marcus felt compelled to speak up. Director Stone, I understand that change is difficult. But I'm not asking you to give up profits. I'm asking you to earn those profits in a way that doesn't accidentally harm your customers. He activated another section of his data. Look at these projections. If we implement adaptive systems gradually, human companies can maintain their current revenue levels while building new markets among newly prosperous alien customers. In 5 years, total human profits could be higher than they are today. And if your projections are wrong? Director Stone asked. Then, we'll adapt and try something else, Marcus said. But if we don't try, and the current system collapses due to political backlash, then human profits will definitely go to zero. Dr. Williams added, the pilot program has already attracted attention from major human corporations who want to implement similar systems. Market forces are already moving toward Marcus's approach. Chairman Rodriguez nodded slowly. Dr. Vasquez, if the Commission implements these systems, what would be the timeline? We propose a 6-month pilot expansion, testing adaptive systems in major trade hubs throughout human space. If the results match Mr. Chen's projections, we would recommend full implementation within 18 months. Marcus felt overwhelmed by the speed at which his small experiment was evolving into galaxy-wide policy. Chairman Rodriguez, I want to make something clear. I'm not trying to dictate galactic economic policy. I just wanted to charge fair prices for repair work. If the Commission thinks my ideas are useful, I'm honored. But I'm still just a mechanic. Mr. Chen, said Dr. Vasquez with a slight smile, you may be just a mechanic, but you've solved a problem that has confounded professional economists for decades. Sometimes an outside perspective is exactly what's needed to see solutions that experts miss. Director Stone stood up abruptly. This is moving too fast. Consolidated Human Enterprises reserves the right to oppose any forced implementation of these experimental systems. No one is forcing implementation, Chairman Rodriguez said calmly. But, Director Stone, companies that voluntarily adopt adaptive pricing systems will have significant competitive advantages as these systems spread. Your choice is to lead this transition or follow it, but the transition is happening whether you participate or not. After Director Stone and several other opponents left the meeting, the remaining officials spent 2 hours working out implementation details. Marcus found himself appointed as a special advisor to the Commission, responsible for helping develop adaptive economic systems for different species and cultures. Marcus, Dr. Vasquez said as the meeting concluded, you should know that the Commission has decided to award you the full 1 million credit prize for solving the human economic dominance puzzle. Marcus stared at her. I solved it? Completely. You identified the cause, cultural compatibility with economic abstraction, and developed practical solutions that address the problem while maintaining prosperity for all parties. It's exactly what the prize was designed to reward. As Marcus walked back to his workshop, his head spinning with everything that had happened, he reflected on how dramatically his life had changed. 3 weeks ago, he'd been a simple mechanic worried about overcharging his customers. Now he was a special advisor to the Galactic Economic Commission, responsible for helping reshape the economic structure of known space. When he arrived at his workshop, he found Vexstar and Zero waiting for him, along with dozens of other alien customers and friends. They erupted in cheers when they saw him, and Marcus realized that news of the council meeting had already spread. Human Marcus, Vexstar said, his skin glowing with pride, you have done something remarkable. You have shown that species can work together for mutual prosperity instead of competing for limited resources. You've proven that economic systems can enhance cultural diversity instead of destroying it, added Zira. Artists throughout the galaxy are celebrating today. Marcus looked around at the diverse crowd of beings who had gathered to thank him, and felt a profound sense of satisfaction. He'd set out to fix a simple pricing problem and had ended up helping to fix something much more important, the relationship between different species in an interconnected galactic economy. "Thank you all," he said simply. "But this is just the beginning. We've proven that fair economics are possible. Now we have to build systems that make them permanent." As the celebration continued around him, Marcus quietly slipped into his workshop and sat down at his workbench. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as he worked with the Commission to develop economic tools for species throughout the galaxy. But tonight, he was still just a mechanic in a small workshop, surrounded by the tools and machines that had taught him how to fix things that were broken. He picked up his favorite sonic wrench and smiled. Sometimes the best solutions to complex problems came from simple tools and simple minds focused on simple goals. The galaxy's economic puzzle was solved, but the real work was just beginning. 6 months had passed since the emergency council meeting, and Marcus Chen stood on the observation deck of the Galactic Economic Commission's flagship research station, watching the most diverse fleet of ships he'd ever seen. Vessels from 47 different species filled the nearby space, their crews here to participate in the first Interspecies Economic Cooperation Summit. The summit was the culmination of half a year of intensive work implementing adaptive economic systems across human space and beyond. What had started as Marcus's simple pricing algorithm had evolved into a comprehensive framework for species-appropriate economic tools that was transforming galactic commerce. "Quite a view, isn't it?" said Dr. Elena Vasquez, joining Marcus at the observation window. The chief economist had become both a mentor and friend over the past months as they worked together to develop and implement the new systems. "I still can't believe this all started because I felt bad about overcharging customers," Marcus said, watching a graceful Phyraxian crystal ship perform an elegant docking maneuver alongside a massive Chronari cargo hauler. "Sometimes the most important changes begin with someone simply deciding to do the right thing," Dr. Vasquez replied. "Your decision to charge fair prices led you to question the entire structure of galactic economics. That kind of moral clarity is rarer than you might think." Marcus turned away from the window as their conversation was interrupted by an excited chiming from his personal communicator. The message was from Zira, the Phyraxian artist who had become something of an unofficial ambassador for the new economic systems among creative communities. Marcus, her holographic image appeared, sparkling with excitement. "You have to see what the artistic cooperatives have accomplished." The hologram expanded to show a stunning three-dimensional artwork that seemed to float in space itself. The piece incorporated elements from dozens of different species' artistic traditions, creating something that was simultaneously alien and familiar, complex and elegant. "This is the first collaborative artwork created using interspecies economic cooperation principles," Zira explained. Artists from 17 different species contributed materials, techniques, and ideas. "The economic framework you developed made it possible for beings with completely different concepts of value and exchange to work together as equals." Marcus stared at the artwork, awed by its beauty and by what it represented. "How did you manage the economic coordination?" Each species contributed according to their economic capabilities and cultural preferences, but everyone received equal shares in the final work's value. The Chronari provided secure storage and transportation. The Zelkari contributed individual artistic techniques. The Morphic Collective offered shape-shifting materials. Humans provided coordination and marketing systems. Everyone gave what they could give and received what they needed. Dr. Vasquez studied the display with professional interest. "This is exactly what we hoped would happen. Economic tools that work with cultural differences instead of against them, creating possibilities that couldn't exist otherwise." "It gets better," Zira continued. "The success of this project has inspired the creation of an interspecies creative cooperative. We're establishing economic systems that will allow artists from any species to collaborate on projects that would be impossible for any single culture to create alone." After Zira's message ended, Marcus and Dr. Vasquez made their way to the station's central conference chamber, where the economic summit was about to begin. The chamber itself was a marvel of adaptive design, with environmental controls and seating arrangements that could accommodate the diverse physical needs of dozens of different species. As they entered, Marcus was struck by the sight of so many different types of beings working together. Thoraxian's crystalline forms refracted light in beautiful patterns as they gestured animatedly. Zelkari traders displayed constantly shifting skin colors as they engaged in complex negotiations. Cranari representatives moved with careful, measured precision through the crowds. The air hummed with translation devices converting dozens of languages into intelligible communication. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all configurations, announced the summit's moderator, a stately Eldorian whose ancient species had agreed to host the proceedings. Welcome to this historic gathering. For the first time in galactic history, we meet not as competitors fighting over limited resources, but as partners working to expand prosperity for all. The moderator gestured toward Marcus. We begin by hearing from the individual whose insights made this cooperation possible. Marcus Chen, human mechanic and special advisor to the Galactic Economic Commission. Marcus felt the familiar nervousness he experienced every time he was asked to address important audiences. He was still fundamentally just a person who fixed things for a living, thrust into a role he'd never sought or prepared for. Thank you, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's sophisticated audio systems. 6 months ago, I discovered I was accidentally overcharging my alien customers because I was using human economic assumptions about pricing. I felt terrible about it, so I tried to create a fairer system. He paused, looking around at the diverse audience. I had no idea that my small pricing problem was actually a symptom of a much larger issue affecting the entire galaxy. Humans had developed economic tools that worked well for our culture, but we were applying them universally without considering whether they worked for anyone else. Marcus activated a holographic display showing economic data from the past 6 months. The results of implementing culturally adaptive economic systems have exceeded our most optimistic projections. Total galactic trade volume has increased by 37%. Interspecies conflicts over economic issues have decreased by 62%. Most importantly, prosperity is spreading more evenly across different species and cultures. A Cranari representative raised a tentacled appendage. Mr. Chen, the Cranari Economic Assembly wishes to express our gratitude for the development of risk-minimized investment systems. For the first time in our history, we can participate in large-scale economic ventures without fear of catastrophic losses. The Thoraxian Council also offers thanks, added a crystal-voiced artist. Cooperative economic frameworks have allowed us to preserve our cultural emphasis on community harmony while achieving unprecedented prosperity. Vexstar, representing the Zelkari Trade Federation, stood to speak. The individualized economic tools have revolutionized Zelkari commerce. We maintain our independence while benefiting from collective economic strength. It is everything we hoped for but never thought possible. Marcus felt a warm sense of satisfaction as he listened to species after species describe how adaptive economic systems had improved their lives. But his attention was drawn to a section of the chamber where a group of human representatives sat quietly, their expressions ranging from resigned acceptance to obvious displeasure. I'd like to address concerns that some humans may have about these changes, Marcus said, looking directly at the human delegation. I know that some people worry we're giving up economic advantages that our species worked hard to achieve. He modified his display to show long-term economic projections. But the data shows that human prosperity has actually increased as other species have become more prosperous. We're selling more goods and services than ever before because our customers can afford to buy more. We're discovering new markets and new opportunities that didn't exist when most aliens could barely afford basic necessities. Director Patricia Stone, who had opposed Marcus's work from the beginning, stood to respond. Mr. Chen, while your short-term results are encouraging, Consolidated Human Enterprises remains concerned about the long-term implications of voluntarily reducing human economic advantages. What guarantee do we have that other species won't eventually outcompete us using the tools we've provided? Marcus had expected this question. Director Stone, there is no guarantee. But consider the alternative. If we had maintained the old system, we would have faced increasing political and economic tensions as other species united against human dominance. We would have been seen as economic parasites, and eventually excluded from galactic commerce entirely. He gestured toward the diverse audience. Instead, we're now seen as partners who helped create economic systems that benefit everyone. We've gained the goodwill and loyalty of species throughout the galaxy. In the long term, cooperation will be much more profitable than domination. Dr. Vasquez stood to add supporting data. The Commission's analysis indicates that human economic growth under the new systems will exceed what we could have achieved under the old model within 3 years. We're not sacrificing human prosperity, we're building a foundation for sustainable growth that benefits everyone. The Eldorian moderator called for questions from the audience, and Marcus found himself fielding inquiries about technical implementations, cultural adaptations, and future developments. The questions came from economists, politicians, traders, artists, and ordinary beings who had benefited from the new systems. As the formal session concluded, representatives from various species approached Marcus to discuss specific applications of adaptive economic principles to their unique cultures and circumstances. He spent hours in detailed conversations about everything from morphic collective fluid state economics to crystalloid hive mind resource distribution. Later that evening, Marcus attended a reception where delegates from different species mingled freely, something that would have been unusual at previous galactic gatherings where species tended to self-segregate along economic and political lines. Marcus called a familiar voice, and he turned to see Zira approaching with a group of artists from various species. "We wanted to thank you personally for what you've accomplished." A tall, ethereal being that Marcus recognized as a cosmic wanderer spoke in harmonious tones that the translation system rendered as music. "Your work has enabled creative collaborations that transcend the limitations of any single species' perspective. Art itself is evolving because of the economic possibilities you've created." "I just solved a pricing problem," Marcus said modestly. "You're the ones creating beautiful things with the tools." "Perhaps," said a Crenari sculptor whose work Marcus had seen displayed throughout the station, "but tools matter. Before your economic systems, we could only dream of projects requiring resources beyond our species' individual capabilities. Now we can build those dreams." As the reception continued, Marcus found himself in conversation with Dr. Vasquez and several other economists who were working on the next phase of economic development. "Marcus," said Dr. Vasquez, "we've been discussing expansion beyond the current systems. There are still dozens of species that haven't fully adopted adaptive economics, and we're encountering new challenges as the systems scale up." "What kind of challenges?" "Coordination complexity, for one thing. As more species adopt different variations of economic tools, it becomes increasingly difficult to manage interactions between all the different systems. We need metasystems that can coordinate between different adaptive approaches." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Like a universal translator, but for economic systems?" "Exactly. And that's not the only challenge. Some species have biological or psychological characteristics that make standard economic concepts completely inappropriate. We need to develop entirely new approaches for beings that don't think in terms of individual ownership, or species that exist in multiple dimensions, or collectives that share consciousness." Marcus felt the familiar excitement he experienced when confronting a new technical challenge. "Those sound like interesting problems to solve." "We were hoping you'd say that," said another economist. "The Commission would like to establish a permanent research center for adaptive economic development, with you as the director." Marcus was quiet for a moment, processing the implications. "A permanent research center?" "Based here on the station, with staff from multiple species and access to resources from throughout the galaxy. Your job would be to continue developing economic tools for species and cultures that don't currently have effective systems." The offer was tempting, but Marcus felt uncertain about taking on such a large responsibility. "I'm honored, but I'm not sure I'm qualified to run a major research center. I'm still just a mechanic who stumbled onto an interesting problem." Dr. Vasquez smiled. "Marcus, that's exactly why you're the right person for the job. Professional economists get trapped in conventional thinking. You approach economic problems like engineering problems, you look at what's broken and figure out how to fix it. That's exactly the mindset we need." Before Marcus could respond, their conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the reception's entrance. A group of beings he didn't recognize had arrived, and their presence seemed to be causing excitement among the other delegates. "Who are they?" Marcus asked. Dr. Vasquez checked her information device. Representatives from the Distant Reach Coalition, species from the far edge of the galaxy that have had minimal contact with mainstream galactic civilization. They've apparently traveled here specifically to learn about adaptive economic systems. Marcus watched as the newcomers were welcomed by delegates from established species. The beings were unlike anything he'd seen before. One appeared to be made entirely of shifting energy patterns, another seemed to exist partially outside normal spacetime, and a third looked like a small planet that had achieved consciousness. Marcus said the energy being through a specialized translation system, "We have heard of your work developing economic tools for different types of consciousness and biology. Our species have unique challenges that no existing economic systems can address." "What kind of challenges?" Marcus asked, his curiosity overcoming his nervousness about dealing with such exotic beings. "We exist as pure energy," the being explained. "We do not create or consume physical objects. Our needs and capabilities are entirely different from matter-based species. Traditional economics has no framework for beings like us." The spacetime entity added its own perspective through quantum-dimensional translations. "We experience past, present, and future simultaneously. Linear economic concepts like investment, return, and temporal value have no meaning for us. Yet we wish to participate in galactic commerce and civilization." The planetary consciousness rumbled with geological sounds that conveyed vast, slow thoughts. "We think in terms of eons and continental drift. Your economic systems operate too quickly for us to comprehend, yet we have resources and needs that could benefit others." Marcus felt both fascinated and overwhelmed. These beings represented challenges far beyond anything he'd encountered before. "I have to admit, I have no idea how to create economic systems for species like yours. You're talking about fundamental questions about the nature of value, time, and existence itself." "Perhaps," suggested Dr. Vasquez, "this is exactly why we need that research center. Marcus, you've proven that seemingly impossible economic problems can be solved with creative thinking and practical experimentation." The energy being's pattern shifted in what Marcus interpreted as agreement. "We do not expect instant solutions. But we hope that the principles you have developed, adapting economic tools to work with natural characteristics instead of against them, might eventually apply even to beings like us." Marcus looked around at the diverse gathering of species, each with their own unique needs and perspectives, and felt the weight of possibility and responsibility. 6 months ago, his biggest concern had been whether he was charging fair prices for engine repairs. Now he was being asked to help develop economic systems for beings made of pure energy and consciousness that existed outside normal time. "All right," he said finally. "I'll take the research center position. But I want to make something clear. I still don't really know what I'm doing. I'm going to approach these problems the same way I approach broken engines, figure out what's not working, understand why it's not working, then build something that does work." "That approach has been quite successful so far," Dr. Vasquez noted with amusement. Over the following days, Marcus participated in dozens of technical sessions where species shared their experiences with adaptive economic systems and identified areas for future development. The sessions were intensely educational, exposing him to economic concepts and challenges he'd never imagined. The hive minds presented problems of collective decision-making where individual ownership was meaningless. The phase shifters dealt with existence across multiple dimensional states simultaneously. The temporal nomads lived backwards through time relative to everyone else. Each species had developed unique adaptations of Marcus's basic principles, but many still faced fundamental incompatibilities with standard economic frameworks. The key insight, Marcus explained during a presentation to the assembled delegates on the summit's final day, is that economics isn't really about money or trade or profit. It's about how beings coordinate their activities to meet their needs and achieve their goals. He gestured toward the diverse audience. Every species has needs and goals. Every species has capabilities and resources. Economics is just the systematic method for connecting those needs with those capabilities. The specific tools and mechanisms should adapt to how each species naturally thinks and operates. A delegate from one of the machine intelligences raised a metallic appendage. "Mr. Chen, how do we develop economic systems for beings whose thought processes are fundamentally incomprehensible to biological species?" "The same way we develop them for any other species," Marcus replied. We study how you naturally organize yourselves, what you consider valuable, how you make decisions, and what you're trying to achieve. Then, we build economic tools that work with those natural patterns instead of trying to force you into systems designed for biological beings. The summit concluded with the signing of the Galactic Economic Cooperation Accord, a document establishing principles for species-appropriate economic development and creating frameworks for ongoing cooperation. Marcus found himself listed as one of the primary architects of the agreement, a development that still seemed surreal to him. As delegates prepared to depart, many approached Marcus with final thanks and promises to stay in contact as they implemented adaptive systems in their own regions of space. "Human Marcus," said Vextar as he prepared to board his ship, "you have given the galaxy something precious, the knowledge that different beings can prosper together without surrendering what makes them unique. You've proven that diversity is an economic asset, not a liability," added Zira. "Different perspectives and capabilities create opportunities that uniformity cannot." As the last ships departed and the station returned to its normal operations, Marcus stood once again at the observation window, looking out at the stars. Dr. Vasquez joined him, carrying a data pad with preliminary plans for the new research center. "Any regrets?" she asked. Marcus considered the question seriously. 6 months ago, he'd been a simple mechanic with a small workshop and no responsibilities beyond fixing broken machines. Now he was responsible for helping develop economic systems that would affect billions of beings across the galaxy. "No regrets," he said finally. "But I hope I can live up to what everyone expects from me." "Marcus, you've already exceeded everyone's expectations, including your own. The research center will give you resources and support that you haven't had before. And you'll have the best economic minds from throughout the galaxy working with you." She handed him the data pad. The initial staff roster includes economists from 12 different species, each bringing their own perspectives and expertise. "You won't be working alone." Marcus reviewed the roster, noting names from species throughout the galaxy. Many were beings he'd met during the summit, experts who had become personally invested in the success of adaptive economic systems. "Dr. Vasquez," he said, "there's something I've been wondering about. Why did it take so long for someone to notice the cultural compatibility problem with economics? It seems obvious in retrospect." "Because," she replied, "most economists study economics as an abstract system separate from the cultures that use it. You studied economics as a practical tool that had to work for real people in real situations. That's a fundamentally different approach that led to fundamentally different insights." Marcus nodded, understanding. "I approached it like an engineering problem instead of a theoretical problem." "Exactly. And that's the approach the galaxy needs as we continue developing these systems. There will be new challenges, unexpected problems, and species with needs we can't currently imagine. But I'm confident that the principles you've established will continue to guide us toward solutions." As they walked toward the section of the station that would become the new research center, Marcus reflected on the strange path that had brought him here. He'd wanted to be a mechanic because he enjoyed fixing things that were broken. He'd never expected that the most important thing he'd fix would be the economic relationships between species across the galaxy. But, in a way, it made perfect sense. Economic systems were just complex machines for organizing cooperative behavior. Like any machine, they could break down, develop inefficiencies, or become unsuited for their intended purposes. And, like any machine, they could be repaired, improved, or replaced with better designs. Dr. Vasquez, he said as they entered what would become his new office, "I have an idea for the research center's first major project." "What's that?" Marcus smiled, feeling the familiar excitement of a new technical challenge. "I want to develop economic systems that can automatically adapt to new species as we encounter them. Instead of spending months or years figuring out appropriate tools for each new culture, we create systems that learn and adjust themselves." "Adaptive economic artificial intelligence?" "Exactly. Economic systems that think and evolve just like the beings they serve." Dr. Vasquez studied the concept with growing excitement. "Marcus, that could revolutionize first contact protocols. Instead of trying to impose our economic frameworks on newly discovered species, we could offer them systems that automatically configure themselves for optimal cultural compatibility." And it would help with species like those energy beings and temporal nomads who are so different from anything we've encountered before. The systems could experiment and learn how to work with types of consciousness we can't even understand. As they began sketching out preliminary research plans, Marcus felt a deep satisfaction. The galactic economic puzzle was solved, but it had revealed entirely new puzzles that would keep him busy for years to come. He was still just a mechanic, really. But now he was a mechanic working on the most complex and important machines in the galaxy, the systems that allowed billions of different beings to work together toward shared prosperity. And there were always new things to fix.